welcome back to the show. Today we have Tim Sanders. He's an author and keynote speaker. Tim, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be back with you, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you kind of on the TV version of the show. We did a show a while ago for the radio version, and I thought, wow, this guy's, well, you've done a lot in your career, and we'll kind of get into that quickly. And, you know, if you do want the full kind of more elaborate interview with you, you can kind of go to buildingthefutureshow.com and watch or listen to the previous version where we kind of dive a little bit deeper. But I did want to have you again on the show because I read your book, Deal Storming, and I really, really enjoyed it. I always kind of, yeah, there you go. That's awesome. I always wondered kind of how people sell in the modern kind of times, for lack of a better term. And so maybe before we kind of get into Deal Storming, though, let's cover your background quickly. And people can get more information, like I said, kind of through the radio version. But let's get to know you quickly a little bit first.
Most of my career, I've been in the world of sales.
Sure.
Started out in radio. By 1997, I moved into internet. I was one of Mark Cuban's first employees at his startup, which became broadcast.com. After he sold the company to Yahoo and I went to Yahoo, I worked in both marketing and sales, and I eventually became the company's chief solutions officer by 2001. Left the company around 2005 to write books and start a consulting practice. And for the last decade, I've been helping companies big and small crack big deals and save their biggest customers using a technique I call deal storming.
Love it. So what exactly is deal storming?
So deal storming is the act of bringing together multiple perspectives around the table to solve every single little problem that stands between you and the deal. Think of it as a very improved form of brainstorming that's geared at contracting. Contracting, Kevin, is a sales phrase that says that with every interaction with the prospect, I'm moving just a little bit closer to the sale. And in the world we live in today, if you're not contracting, you're going to lose the deal each and every time.
Totally. No, I 100% agree with you. It's interesting for me. So how do you kind of, if your organization is kind of new to this or doesn't even really understand even how to get started with kind of this new approach, because I think a lot of people are kind of stuck in their old ways, right? They know they need to change, but they don't really understand how or where to kind of start. And what do you tell people when they're kind of struggling with that?
Absolutely. So when I started in sales, I mentioned before I sold radio and then later TV advertising.
Sure.
It was the lone wolf culture. I mean, dude, it was like straight out of Glengarry Glen Ross. If you could deliver the thunderous pitch,
sure,
if you could gauge their interest and killer close, you made your numbers because it was belly to belly. It was a simple product. It was a simple process, and everything's changed. So when I talk to people about making this leap from the lone wolf culture to the team-based culture, I say, look at it this way. If it was like a video game, it's like Halo today. When I started out, it was like Pong, literally one-on-one, baby, but today it's multiplayer, multi-level. So think about it this way. Today's sale in B2B, it involves 5.4 decision makers. And for entrepreneurs watching this, it's just as bad when it comes to fundraising. There is no one person to convince. But here's the weird point. Of those 5.4 decision makers you've got to convince, you're only going to get in front of maybe 2 at the most, maybe 3. You'll never get them all round up into the same room. That's why you've got to be a lot more creative, a lot more innovative. When it comes to how you sell, you've got to become more agile because they're doing their own research. They've heard it all before. And this is why we got to make this leap in how we sell from me to we. So when I go into organizations or I talk to people like those that might be watching this, and they ask the same question you did, like, what's the starting point? The starting point is a deal you cannot afford to lose.
Interesting. Okay.
So in the book, third chapter is called Sales Genius is a Team Sport. And by the way, Kevin, for everybody that's watching this, you can download that at dealstorming.net/free.
Interesting. Okay.
Takes you right to that chapter. Anyway, I reveal a case study of a person at Career Builder. Her name is Alyssa D'Amatos. She rose from inside salesperson to the top salesperson in the history of the company.
Wow.
What she did is she was in a culture that traditionally in staffing was very lone wolf. You know, you eat what you kill, right? It's
Totally.
about
Yep.
that forceful personality and tenacity. But she found one example, and it was the largest customer they had that had fired them due to a misunderstanding. And getting back in and getting back to where they were was going to create a lot of difficulty for her. So she knew that everyone across the company, whether they were marketing, operations, service, even the engineering team in Atlanta, she knew they all could relate to the idea of save our reputation.
Totally.
We don't lose our biggest client due to them thinking we misrepresented a price increase. She knew that she was going to have to build a team. So what she did, and this is my point, she found something that had a really big why. It wasn't about her making her number. It wasn't about a $50,000 deal. In this case, it was a $3 million deal, by the way. It was about something bigger. It was about our reputation, our sense of pride, bringing back our best customer. And that's the kind of thing that causes everybody to be willing to try something new.
Totally.
So the only twist here, because you've all been in that situation, is collaboration instead of escalation. Okay, so in the old world, the lone wolf escalated it to the king wolf, which was like the CEO or the division head. And I'm not sure how much value, to be honest with you, the CEO added other than picking up the phone and calling the other CEO. Occasionally, because they're high intelligence, they might have pointed out something the sales rep was missing. But in our research, collaboration leads to 300% more performance than escalation as a way of going after those big ones that you just can't let get away.
Wow, that's actually amazing, really, right? That it's that significant of an increase.
It is. I mean, let me illustrate this for you. So when you go into the average enterprise company that sells any kind of technology or communication solution, there's a lot of those, right?
Sure.
And I look at their pipeline, and what we calculate is their closing ratio for what we call quality deals. Okay. It varies by company, but mostly a quality deal is a little bit larger, say 6 to 7 figures. Okay. It's high profit. It's a win-win for both sides of the table, meaning you're pretty sure you're going to ROI for them in spades. And so that's a quality deal. Get it sold, get it installed, it becomes a revenue machine over time. A lot of resources go against those in any company. Whether or not you ever read Deal Storming, you put a lot of wood against those quality deals, okay?
Sure.
Average closing rate is around 20 to 25%, depending on the average organization I talk to.
Sure. Okay.
When they implement deal storming as a way of dealing with larger opportunities, that closing ratio goes from 20 to 25% to 65 to 70%.
Wow. Interesting.
And that's not just one or two isolated examples. That is over 100 deal storms, $2.5 billion of deal flow opportunity. And the other twist here is not only does the closing rate for quality business goes up, the sales cycle compresses by 25% because these people are faster at solving all those little problems. Now, this is the way you introduce it. But what I've learned in my experience is that you can use a deal storm to solve a relatively average deal. And you do that by building a smaller team. You do it by sprinting in a shorter window. Here's the point. Don't go down alone.
Fair. It's good advice.
And things are getting very complex. And if you do it on your own, you will get stuck. So if nothing else, what you want to develop is this habit of at least being the terrific trio when you get stuck, finding at least 2 other ways of seeing the world. Maybe someone in delivery or account coordination, maybe somebody over in marketing and operations, and approaching the average to large deal with that same sense of vigor that you go for the game changers.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think the thing that I really liked about kind of the whole deal storming approach when I was reading through the book is a lot of companies don't include people from other departments that are outside of sales, right? And that always seemed to kind of be really kind of odd to me because I worked at an agency years ago, like a marketing agency years ago, and some of our best campaigns came from people outside of, like, even one of our developers came up with one of our greatest campaigns that ever happened, right?
Right.
And
do you know why that happened?
Okay, well, I kind of have an opinion, but I kind of want to know your thoughts, to be honest.
No, tell me yours first, dude. I'm interested.
Well, I think, partly because they see it differently, right? And I think in a lot of cases, the developer was the target market for the campaign or their type, right?
Yeah.
And so it was interesting, right? But I'm curious to know what you think of that.
Well, you nailed it, but let me give it a word. It's called perspective. Perspective.
Sure. Okay.
Your perspective is a story that you tell yourself about what succeeds and what fails, what you can do, what you can't do.
Okay, interesting.
How to approach a particular problem. And your job shapes that story, your day-to-day experience. Abraham Maslow, the great psychologist, said what? If you're good with the hammer, everything's a nail, okay? So a marketing person says back up and do some research. A salesperson says charge forward and close the deal. The engineering person says maybe we've over-designed the sales process by a factor of 2. That's a bunch of different ways of looking at the same problem. If you can bring them together and champion the concept that ideas can come from anywhere, then a developer can bring the game changer to the meeting because she has a different set of constraints. She has a different set of best practices in her mind for how you solve a problem. And as they say in the gambling world, she doesn't know what she doesn't know. And sometimes that's what you need because, Kevin, the world is changing really quick.
Totally, yeah.
Something that didn't work 3 years ago is the disruptive thing that's killing you today. And I've got so many examples in my life where I wish I would have left Yahoo a little bit earlier.
Okay.
Because I was so saddled with the constraints of things, the ways that Jerry and David thought, like no search engine in history will ever make money, circa 1999. No one will ever use social media. They get bored in about 3 months. We learned that in 1996. See, these are constraints that became obsolete, which leads me to the idea that products don't become obsolete. Companies become obsolete because their key decision makers are living with constraints that are actually opportunities. So when you bring together different perspectives, like a developer, like a marketing person, like a BD person, that's how you triple your chance of success. There's a great book for everybody to read called Where Good Ideas Come From by Steven Johnson. And he basically analyzed the secret to being a good inventor. And it's this: have a lot of ingredients and knowledge of how to mix them together. Because creativity is not the search for something new to pop into your head. It's to discover something that already exists but has not been applied to the present problem. And that's what collaboration achieves.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I can't remember. It's to something similar to you just mentioned. Somebody was telling me that, like, basically you take any great invention ever, they basically put all the pieces from a bunch of different people together with, like, the last piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
And then
I mean,
they
I think the inventor...
whatever.
Yeah, the inventor is more of a curator, right?
Totally.
So every invention in history is 2 or more ingredients properly combined. If it was one ingredient, we would call it a discovery, like electricity.
Got you.
So everything gets combined. And if you look through the annals of history, there's a lot of great books on the myths of creativity. Every great invention is the last mile. Right. Eli Whitney just figured out how to use the existing cotton gin technology, been around for 50 years. He figured out how to make it work for short staple cotton, which was predominantly what was grown in the South. Darwin didn't come up with evolution as a theory. His granddad started working on that. What Darwin came up with is an explanation called natural selection that was much more acceptable to the scientific community than the Big Bang theory. And I could go on and on and on. Every deal is 100 problems solved by a team, and that's why I'm so excited to see this way of thinking leap outside of product and marketing and make its way to sales and business development and fundraising.
Sure. So I'm curious then to know what do you tell people when they know that they want to bring this to their team, but they don't really know how, or like how do you go and kind of sell it to your team? Like, let's try this on our next deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just all depends on next deal. I mean, let me ask you this. What's the secret to comedy? Timing.
Sure. Okay, fair.
Okay.
Fair.
So what you've got to do is you've got to study how deal storming works because it's a 7-step process. I outlined it in the book. Sure. You've got to be very clear on how you qualify an opportunity to say, let's put a team together to go win this thing and let's get outside of the sales world so we can be more creative. You gotta qualify that opportunity. As I mentioned, look for one that has appeal across departments, not losing to a rival that you hate. That's a good one. That's a good one.
That's probably the best one, right?
That's probably, it's the best one because when you guys get into the room, you've put competition outside of the room, right?
Totally.
So losing to a rival, big one. Saving your reputation, big one. Breaking into a new market that's going to change everything, kind of a big one, but you're getting close to money talk now. And then, of course, money talk, maybe if everybody has stock options, I'm still not sure. People have their own agendas, but they're all operating with the best of intentions. So if you choose and qualify the right one, then the trick then is to ask two simple questions. Who has a stake in the outcome of how we do this and whether we win? That's it. That's a really important first question, because that's going to cause you to say, well, the delivery team is really going to care how we sell it because they own the work afterwards. The marketing person who's working on our brand position for next year is really going to care about this because we've never had a deal in healthcare. So you begin to think about your team. And when you ask them to join, you're not saying, well, I want to bring this new technique to the company. You say, look, I want you to join a cause. And the cause is winning this deal so the other guys don't, because I'm pissed off at those other guys always winning. And I want you to join because I think you have a stake in how this goes. And I think your opinion's valuable. So anyway, when you're out building your little team, and don't build a large one in the beginning, just try to make it 4 or 5 at the most, but make sure they all have different ways of seeing the world. You ask that question first, who has a stake? And the last little thing you ask is, can I invite an expert who might know something about my problem? Back to your developer. You know, here's an expert who has a design thinking approach to problem solving, okay? Sure. We don't. We have a linear approach to problem solving, A to B to C to D. They kind of redesign the game. That's why the phrase hacker kind of comes from design thinking. So this person might be an expert in a process problem. Or if you're building something for developers, you invite a developer because he's an expert on the mind of the developer. Anywho, the stakeholders and one expert, that's the core of your first team. Don't make a production out of it. Just say, we have a cause. We want to win this opportunity, and we are stuck, and I need your help.
Sure.
People are happy to come to your aid if you ask them to join a cause. If you ask them to just come to a meeting or jump on a phone call, now that sounds like a lot of work. Never underestimate the power of purpose in creating a team. So once you build this team, just make sure that everybody in the room, you respect their time. Your meetings aren't too long. There's always action after the meeting. And when you win, everyone in the room gets credit, not just he gets credit for having a great idea. The team gets credit. It's very public. And if you've created an innovation that's changed the way this deal worked, you need to escalate that to more senior sales or leadership management so they can try it a few more times and be agile in the market. And my friend, that will spur team selling across organizations more than an executive announcing a new technique, read this book, adopt this new program. Nothing succeeds like success.
Yeah, no, I love that approach. And like I found that works for me personally. Well, it's kind of related, but for me, it's like I work as a creative director. And so basically the sooner I can involve kind of like the developers or the developer at least early on, even in like a rough wireframing time when we're just on the whiteboard, you know, and we're both agree at like such early stages about a project, like they're passionate about it, I'm passionate about it. And it's exactly what you're talking about, where if you get everybody passionate and on board about the project before you even win the project, then once you do win the project, everybody's like gung-ho to go, right?
That's right.
And they agree and they're passionate and they love it,
yeah.
right?
You want to involve them when it's a sales challenge, not a delivery crisis.
Totally.
I mean, you don't want to throw work over the wall. But I want to give a little twist here. So when you're collaborating, the power of 2, that lifts your chance of success by 25%. So when you bring in that developer and you're increasing your chance of finding the solution to whatever the problem is at the moment by 25, that's pretty good. But if you bring a third personality into the room, I'm just making this up, maybe a business development person that's out talking to the customer, now that's 3. Your chances go up 100%. But what about that fourth person? That fourth person could be on the outside. It could be a software partner of yours. I'm just making this up.
Sure.
It could be your lead partner at Adobe. I'm just making this up for a creative example. Sure. But they have a stake in whether you win because you're a big customer of theirs, and they got a whole different way of thinking about the back end of how everything's going to work, not from a user experience, but from an enterprise experience. And they bring that to the table. Everybody's eyes gets open. So the question you should always ask yourself is this: who's missing? Or what surprising addition can we make to the team that could potentially change everything? And you know it because when they show up in the room, the other 2 or 3 people go, why is she here? And that's when you know you've just diversified the pot a little bit. But the key here idea is you've got to respect people's time. You got to structure meetings that are short, well organized, where they're prepared in advance. They need to see that after the meeting, you're actually putting the ideas and executing them, and you got to give them credit. And you've got to always be super thoughtful about protecting the introverts from the extroverts in these meetings so everyone has a chance to share what they know.
Sure. No, I think that's really good advice. And sadly, Tim, we're out of time, but let's maybe kind of close with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself online and the book, of course.
Absolutely. Just visit timsanders.com. You can join any of my social network webs. I'm accepting all invitations on LinkedIn.
Sure.
At timsanders.com, you can find out a lot more about deal storming. I mentioned before there's a free chapter of the book. You can download the free chapter, Sales Genius is a Team Sport, 32 pages with a really good case study at dealstorming.net/free.
Great, Tim. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you. And, hopefully we can do this again at some time.
Absolutely, Kevin. My pleasure.
All right. Talk soon. Okay. Bye.